Hello everyone, welcome to the Global Economic Perspectives with Raymond. I'm your host, Raymond Chen. In this episode, we will talk about something that may look very small, but could eventually become very big for Hong Kong's financial system. Yes, the historic launch of Hong Kong Dollars Stablecoins. On August 12, Hong Kong finally saw the launch of its first regulated Hong Kong Dollars Stablecoin, the HKDAP, which stands for Hong Kong Dollars At Par, issued by Anchorpoint Financial. After months of regulatory preparation, and about 4 months later, Anchorpoint received one of Hong Kong's first two stablecoin issuer licenses. Regulate Hong Kong Dollar Stablecoin has finally moved from policy documents into the real world. And my view is quite straightforward. This is not simply the launch of another cryptocurrency. It is the beginning of turning the Hong Kong dollar into programmable digital money. That distinction is extremely important. For your information, Anchorpoint is a joint venture involving Standard Chartered Bank Hong Kong, HKD, and Anchorpoint brands. Standard Chartered brings banking, treasury, compliance, and international financial expertise. HKD contributes payment and consumer technology capabilities, while Anchorpoint brands brings Web3 and blockchain expertise. And this combination is actually quite interesting. It brings together three worlds that previously developed largely separately: traditional banking, telecommunications, and Web3. Anchorpoint received one of the first two stablecoin licenses granted by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority on April 10th this year, with HSBC receiving the other. The fact that only two licenses were granted from a much larger pool of applicants demonstrates just how demanding the regulatory requirements are. So what exactly is HKDAP? To make it simpler, one HKDAP is designed to represent one Hong Kong dollar. And I have three very important messages to you all. It is not designed to appreciate like Bitcoin. It does not pay interest, and it is not an investment product. Instead, it is much closer to digital cash. According to Anchorpoint's published white paper, Hong Kong DAP is backed by reserve assets with a market value at least equal to the total HKDAP in circulation. These reserves are held in a trust structure and segregate from Anchorpoint's own assets. The company also says it aims to process valid redemption requests within 1 business day. And this is where Hong Kong's regulatory model becomes particularly important. The value of stablecoin is not simply determined by the technology behind it. The real question is, what stands behind the token? Hong Kong's framework requires licensed issuers to provide redemption at par value and to maintain appropriate reserve arrangements. In other words, the objective is not to create a token that merely claims to be worth $1. It is to create a regulated digital representation of money that can actually be redeemed at $1. And this is what gives HKDAP its gold content. It is not gold in the literal sense. Its values comes from regulations, reserves, redemption rights, governance, custody, and confidence. That is a very different proposition from an unregulated crypto token. Some people may ask, if the world already has US dollar stablecoins, why bother creating an Hong Kong dollar stablecoin? The answer is simple. Because Hong Kong does not need to compete with the US dollar on the US dollar's terms. Hong Kong needs to digitalize its own comparative advantage. The Hong Kong dollar is already a major international currency. According to the BIS 2025 survey, the Hong Kong dollar's share of global foreign exchange turnover increased from 2.6% in 2022 to 3.8% in 2025. Hong Kong's average daily FX turnover reached approximately US $883 billion, maintaining its position as one of the world's major foreign exchange centers. So the strategic question is not whether Hong Kong dollars can replace US dollars. It probably cannot, and there is no need for it to do so. The strategic question is, can Hong Kong make the Hong Kong dollars more useful in the digital economy? And this is where stablecoins become interesting. Think about traditional money. If I transfer money from one bank account to another, I am moving money through a banking system. But if I want to settle a transaction involving a tokenized bond on a blockchain, I need money that can exist on the same digital infrastructure. Otherwise, I have a mismatch. The asset is digital and operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the settlement money remains dependent on traditional banking tracks. A regulated stablecoin potentially solves this mismatch. The asset can be digital. The money can also be digital, and both can settle on compatible infrastructure. And this brings us to its first major applications: payments. For corporations, particularly those operating across borders, stablecoins could reduce settlement time, reduce intermediary layers, and lower transaction cost. Imagine a Hong Kong company paying a supplier in another Asian market. Instead of passing through multiple corresponding banks and waiting for conventional settlement cycles, a regulated digital currency could potentially move almost instantly, subject, of course, to compliance, KYC, and local regulations. For SMEs, this could be even more valuable. Large corporations can negotiate preferential banking arrangements. Smaller companies often cannot. If stablecoin infrastructure reduces some of the friction in cross-border payments, SMEs could potentially gain access to faster and more efficient international financial service. The second major application is trade finance. A trade transaction could eventually involve a digital purchase order, a tokenized invoice, digital shipping documentation, and a stablecoin settlement. That creates something much more powerful than simply paying with crypto. It creates an end-to-end digital trade ecosystem. The third application is securities settlement. This is perhaps where Hong Kong's financial expertise becomes especially important. Hong Kong is one of the world's leading capital markets. If bonds, funds, and other financial assets become tokenized, we need a digital settlement asset. HKDAP could potentially become one of the settlement currencies used for tokenized securities. And this creates a powerful combination: Hong Kong's capital markets plus regulate digital assets plus Hong Kong Dollars Stablecoin. The fourth application is real-world assets, or RWA. Imagine a tokenized bond being issued on a blockchain. An investor buys the bond using HKDAP. Interest is distributed digitally. At maturity, the principal is returned digitally. The entire life cycle becomes programmable, and this is where the concept of programmable money becomes important. Traditional money basically tells you how much you have. Programmable money can potentially incorporate rules about when, where, and under what conditions money can move. And that could transfer areas such as escrow, trade finance, asset management, and corporate treasury. The fifth application is 24/7 treasury management. For financial institutions and multinational corporations, liquidity management is a major issue. Traditional financial markets have opening hours, cut-off times, and settlement cycles. Blockchain infrastructures does not have to operate according to the same timetable. A regulated stablecoin could therefore allow treasury operations to move closer towards a 24/7 model. and that could eventually improve liquidity efficiency. And now, who benefits? For banks, stablecoins create a new business opportunity around custody, settlement, treasury, payments, and tokenized deposits or assets. For securities firms, stablecoins provide a new settlement rail for digital securities. For asset managers, they could become a payment and settlement mechanism for tokenized funds and alternative investments. For fintech companies, stablecoins provide a new programmable financial infrastructure on which applications can be built. For corporates, they could reduce cross-border payment friction and improve treasury efficiency. For SMEs, they may provide cheaper and faster access to international payments. For investors, stablecoins could eventually make digital assets markets more seamless and liquid. And for Hong Kong economy as a whole, the biggest value may be even broader. It is about creating a new layer of financial infrastructure. Hong Kong has traditionally been a bridge between mainland China and the international financial system. And now, we may be moving towards another model. Hong Kong as a bridge between traditional finance and digital finance. That is strategically important. And that is another dimension that I think deserves much more attention. Renminbi internationalization. Hong Kong's stablecoin strategy does not have to compete with the digital renminbi. In fact, they can potentially complement each other. The digital renminbi can strengthen China's domestic and cross-border digital payment ecosystem. The Hong Kong dollar, meanwhile, can serve as an internationally convertible currency operating within Hong Kong's open financial system. Hong Kong can therefore potentially become a place where renminbi, Hong Kong dollars, US dollars, and digital assets interact within a regulated international financial center. And that is a unique advantage. Of course, we should not get carried away. A stablecoin is not automatically successful simply because it has a license. The real test will be adoption. The adoption's numbers will ultimately determine whether HKDAP becomes a niche product or an important piece of Hong Kong's financial infrastructure. And I think Hong Kong's decision to begin with institutional distributors and professional investors is actually sensible. According to Anchorpoint, the eventual model is B2B to C, working through authorized distributors to reach corporates and eventually individual users. So I would describe the development of Hong Kong's stablecoin market in 3 stages. Stage 1 is tokenized money, getting Hong Kong dollars onto blockchain infrastructure safely. Stage 2 is tokenized finance, connect stablecoins with bonds, funds, securities, and RWA. Stage 3 is tokenized economy, connecting payments, trades, treasury, e-commerce, and cross-border commerce. When Hong Kong reached the 3rd stage, the impact could be significant, because then we are no longer talking about cryptocurrency. We are talking about the digitalization of money itself, and that leads me to my conclusion. The significance of HKDAP is not how many tokens are issued on day 1. The significance is that Hong Kong has created a regulated pathway for the Hong Kong dollar to enter the programmable economy. The Hong Kong dollar already has credibility, and Hong Kong already has international capital markets, a sophisticated banking system, the world's largest offshore renminbi business, and is rapidly building its regulated virtual assets ecosystem. And now we are adding another component, regulate digital money. Put all these pieces together, and Hong Kong has the potential to build something that very few financial centers can replicate. A bridge connecting traditional money, digital assets, capital markets, renminbi internationalization, and global finance. So, when we look at HKDAP, I would suggest we do not ask how much is this stablecoin worth? The better question is, how much more useful can a Hong Kong dollar become because of this stablecoin? If Hong Kong gets the ecosystem right, it could eventually become part of a much bigger transformation from Hong Kong dollars in bank accounts to Hong Kong dollars moving through the digital economy 24 hours a day, across borders and across financial markets. And this is just the beginning. Thank you for watching the Global Economic Perspectives with Raymond. I'm Raymond Chan, and I will see you in our next episode. Bye-bye.